A lion appears at a family's door with her cub. The sun hung low over the small town of Crestwood, nestled at the edge of a sprawling savanna in northern Namibia. The air was thick with the scent of dry grass and the distant hum of cicadas. The Harper family, Mark, Sarah, and their 2 children, 12-year-old Liam and 9-year-old Em, lived in a modest single-story home with a wide veranda that overlooked the endless plains. Their life was simple, shaped by the rhythms of the land and the community around them. Mark worked as a mechanic. Sarah taught at the local school, and the kids spent their days exploring the nearby trails, always under the watchful eyes of their parents. It was an ordinary Saturday afternoon when the extraordinary happened. Sarah was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, while Mark tinkered with an old radio in the living room. Liam and Emma were sprawled on the veranda, sketching the landscape in their notebooks, a hobby Sarah encouraged to keep them grounded in the beauty of their surroundings. The day felt like any other until Emma's pencil froze mid-stroke. "Dad," she called, her voice trembling. "Dad, come quick." Mark dropped his screwdriver and rushed outside. Sarah closed behind. Liam was already standing, pointing toward the dirt path that led to their front gate. There, not 20 feet away, stood a lioness. Her tawny coat gleamed in the fading light, and her amber eyes locked onto the family with an intensity that made Mark's heart skip. At her side, stumbling on unsteady legs, was a cub no older than a few months, its fur still speckled with the faint spots of youth. Sarah grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her back toward the door. "Inside now," she whispered, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. Liam hesitated, mesmerized by the sight, but Mark gently nudged him toward the house. The family huddled just inside the doorway, peering through the screen door, their breaths shallow. "What's she doing here?" Liam whispered, his eyes wide. "Lions don't just show up." Mark shook his head, his mind racing. Crestwood was close to the savannah, and sightings of wildlife weren't unheard of. Jackals, antelope, even the occasional hyena, but a lioness this close to a home was unprecedented. And with a cub, that made it even stranger. Lions were fiercely protective of their young, and a mother would never risk bringing her cub near humans, unless something was terribly wrong. The lioness took a step forward, her massive paws silent on the packed earth. The cub wobbled after her, letting out a soft, plaintive mew. Sarah's hand tightened on Mark's arm. "She's not attacking," she murmured. "Look at her. She's calm." Mark squinted, studying the lioness. Sarah was right. There was no bared teeth, no low growl, no raised hackles. The lioness's posture was alert, but not aggressive. Her eyes, though piercing, seemed almost pleading. And then he noticed something else. Her ribs were faintly visible beneath her fur, and her gait was slow, deliberate, as if each step cost her effort. "She's starving," Mark said quietly. "And the cub doesn't look much better." Emma, clutching her sketchbook, peered around her mother. "We have to help them," she said, her voice small but firm. "They're hungry." "Nema, they're wild animals," Sarah said, her tone gentle but firm. "We can't just—" "But they came to us," Emma interrupted, her eyes brimming with tears. "They need us." Liam nodded, his usual bravado replaced by a quiet determination. "What if we called Ranger Tembo? He'd know what to do." Mark exchanged a glance with Sarah. Ranger Tembo was the head of the local wildlife conservation team. A man with decades of experience handling everything from poachers to injured animals. If anyone could help, it was him. "Good idea, Liam," Mark said, pulling out his phone. "I'll call him. Sarah, keep an eye on them." Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the lioness, who had now settled onto her haunches just outside the gate. The cub nestled against her, its tiny body trembling. Sarah's heart ached. She'd always taught her children to respect the wild, to understand that nature was beautiful but dangerous. But this Falmen Donkai, The door was wide open. The lioness and her cub were framed in the doorway, a tableau of raw, untamed life against the domesticity of their home. As Mark spoke to Ranger Tembo, explaining the situation in hushed tones, Sarah noticed something else. The lioness's left front paw was swollen, and she held it slightly off the ground. A thorn, perhaps, or an injury from a hunt gone wrong. It would explain her weakened state. She couldn't hunt effectively, and without food, she couldn't nurse her cub. Ranger Tembo arrived within the hour, his dusty jeep rattling up the path. He was a tall, wiry man with a calm demeanor that instantly put the family at ease. He stepped out, his eyes scanning the scene, and nodded to Mark. "You did the right thing, calling me," he said, his voice low. "Let's take a look." Tembo approached the gate slowly, his movements deliberate, his hands visible to show he meant no harm. The lioness watched him, her ears twitching, but she didn't move. Tembo crouched a safe distance away, studying her. "She's injured," he confirmed after a moment. "And malnourished. The cub, too. They're desperate, or she wouldn't be here." "Can we help them?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with hope. Tembo's expression softened. "It's risky, but yes, we can try. We'll need to tranquilize her to treat the injury and get them both to the sanctuary. They'll be safe there." Sarah felt a pang of relief, but also a strange sadness. The lioness and her cub had come to their doorstep, a fleeting moment of connection between their world and the wild. She glanced at her children, their faces a mix of awe and concern, and knew this was a story they'd carry forever. Tembo radioed for backup, and soon 2 more rangers arrived with a tranquilizer gun and medical supplies. The family watched from the veranda, their hearts in their throats, as Tembo carefully aimed and fired. The dart hit the lioness's flank, and within minutes, her massive form slumped gently to the ground. The cub whimpered, nudging its mother's side, and Emma clutched Sarah's hand. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "They're going to be fine." The rangers worked quickly, examining the lioness's paw. Tembo extracted a large thorn embedded deep in the pad, cleaning and bandaging the wound. They gave her a dose of antibiotics and fluids, then turned their attention to the cub, who was dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. They loaded both animals into a crate in the jeep, designed for safe transport to the sanctuary. Before they left, Tembo turned to the family. "You're lucky," he said. "She could have been dangerous, but she chose to trust you. That's rare." Liam, still processing it all, asked, "Will we see them again?" Tembo smiled. "Come to the sanctuary in a few weeks. They'll be stronger by then. You can see them before we release them back to the wild." The jeep rumbled away, kicking up dust that glowed golden in the sunset. The family stood together, silent, the weight of the moment settling over them. Sarah hugged Emma close, and Mark ruffled Liam's hair. They'd witnessed something extraordinary, not just the presence of a lioness and her cub, but the fragile thread of trust that had brought them to their door. Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal, but the memory lingered. Emma filled her sketchbook with drawings of the lioness, her pencil capturing the strength and vulnerability in those amber eyes. Liam, usually reserved, talked endlessly about the ranger's work, even declaring he might want to be a conservationist one day. Mark and Sarah found themselves more aware of the land around them, the delicate balance of life that hummed just beyond their doorstep. When the day came to visit the sanctuary, the family piled into their old pickup truck, excitement buzzing between them. The sanctuary was a sprawling compound of enclosures and rehabilitation areas, alive with the calls of birds and the distant roar of a lion. Tembo greeted them warmly, leading them to a shaded enclosure where the lioness lay, her coat sleek and her eyes bright. The cub, now plump and playful, bounded around her, chasing a butterfly. "They're doing well," Tembo said, pride in his voice. "She's hunting again, and the cubs thriving. We'll release them soon, back to their pride." Emma stepped closer to the fence, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. "Thank you," she whispered, though it wasn't clear if she was speaking to Tembo, the lioness, or the moment itself. Sarah watched her daughter, then looked at the lioness, who seemed to meet her gaze for a fleeting second. There was no fear now, only a quiet understanding. The lioness had come to them in desperation, and they'd answered her call. In doing so, they'd become part of her story, and she part of theirs. As they drove home that evening, the savannah stretching endless and golden around them, Liam broke the silence. "Do you think she'll remember us?" Mark glanced at Sarah, a smile tugging at his lips. "I don't know, Bud," he said. "But we'll remember her." And they did. The story of the lioness and her cub became a touchstone for the Harpers, a reminder of the wildness that lived just beyond their door, and the trust that could bridge even the widest divides. It was a story they'd tell for years around campfires, at family gatherings, and, one day, on a YouTube channel Liam would start, his voice steady as he shared the tale with the world. The video's title flashed across the screen. A lion appears at a family's door with her cub. When they see what happens next, they can't believe it, and neither could anyone else.